Greetings, everyone. Dale Parrish, COS Today host, along with Mr. Ken Kashuba, co-host, State Communications Coordinator for the state of Indiana. How you doing, Ken?
I'm doing okay, Dale. How about yourself?
Good.
That's good.
As if we haven't seen each other in a long time, huh?
Yeah, it's been a while, right?
Yeah, been a few minutes. Yeah, at least.
At least,
At least.
you were putting down
Yeah.
a donut or two, I think.
Oh, okay.
No, you were, I think.
No.
No, I know. You swore off of those a while ago. That's a good thing.
You know, last time I told you I felt like I was catching a cold last Monday. Well, I did. I caught it, but I'm starting to feel better now. So
That's good.
hopefully
Yeah.
it didn't last very long. Ken, this is broadcast number 322, and you've been on board for 180 of them. Boy, you're closing in on that 200 mark, aren't you?
Yeah, I'll have to take a vacation when we hit 200.
Yeah. No, you can't. All right, Ken, I want to make sure everyone knows if you're searching for our program, COS Today, the best way and easiest way to find us is go to our YouTube channel, American Patriots for Convention of States. Now search on the full title there, American Patriots for Convention of States. And Ken, you can put a link in the chat, right?
I've just put that there. It's already in the chat, so people can just copy that link and go right to it.
Okay. That's, like I said, that's the easiest way to find us. Our channel, you can see the live broadcast, and you can see past broadcasts. You can see all the shorts that we've generated. So that's the easiest and best way to find us. All right. So, Ken, let's let Maringo Mike give us all a little reminder here before we get started. And here we go.
Maringo Mike here, asking you to hit that like, subscribe, and especially that notification bell so you'll be reminded every time we go live. We really do appreciate your support. Now, back to our program.
All right. He never misses a lick, I'll tell you.
Yeah, he's got that down. He's going to be asking for a pay raise pretty soon, Jail, for not making any mistakes,
You think he is? Oh,
Yeah.
It's getting close to Christmas, too. Okay.
He'll have to get a bonus.
Yeah. He'll probably want that, too. Yeah. All right. Thanks for the warning.
Yep.
All right. Let's get started then. This, in our first segment, we've been doing this for some weeks now. Actually, it's been a few months, I guess.
Yep.
It's called the In Focus segment. And this is where we bring on, in addition to Ken and I, we bring on 2 or 3 guests. And we each talk a little bit about what we're focusing on, what's caught our attention in the news and in our world, however you want to phrase it. So what's our focus? And we call this segment In Focus. So, Ken, let's bring on. We've got 3 guests today, and we're not going to stand up for any of these guys. Okay, so we'll just bring them on and let the chips fall where they may. All right.
Sounds good. So you're saying you're doing a disclaimer. This is not the opinion of COS Today. This is this is strictly on their own.
That's right. Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. Yes.
Covered,
that goes for other guests that we're having tonight too. But we'll get to that later. Okay. Our first guest on the In Focus segment is Mr. David Punt, the recent appointee, state director, COS state director for Minnesota. I should say. How you doing, David?
Good. It should be any minute now we get the resolution passed.
Oh, is that right?
I would think so. Yeah, I've been on the job now for a month.
Oh, you got it all figured out then, haven't you?
Yeah. Well, the people running the state before me, they kind of set it up.
Oh,
and so I came along just in time to take the glory.
So you've been sleeping at the State House. Is that what you're saying, Dave?
Yeah, right. I've been napping down there. I got a bunk, got a place, got my own park bench. Yep.
Is that right? Amazing. Wow, man, this guy really jumps into the job, I tell you. Speaking of another state director, how about Gary Harbaugh, state director for the state of Indiana? Hello, Gary. Can you hear us, Gary?
I think Gary's
Good evening. Good evening. And I'd like to point out I have been
Say it again.
state director now for 3 months. Can you hear me?
We're getting a bit of a delay, Gary.
3 months, and we are a past state. I don't know what's taking you so long, David. Is this working or not?
Bit of a delay.
Slow learners, I guess. Slow learners.
Yep.
All right. So let's bring in some sensibleness to this group. Mr. Ken Whaley out of Idaho. And I don't know, Ken, how many titles do you have out in Idaho now?
Just 2 with convention estates. So, okay. And I limited my name title on the bottom just to keep it short and under control. But district captain and the state content writer for the state of Idaho. So, yes. Yep, that's as far as that part goes.
Ken writes
and contributor to the to our finish line here in Indiana. So don't leave that out. Don't leave that out.
Writer
I'll throw a plug in your direction that way next time if I remember. Yeah. So
thanks, Ken.
Yeah.
Now, Ken, you might as well. I'll give you a chance to plug. You're on Substack, right? Where else are you? Where else can they find you?
Basically, I do a couple different things. The main focus I do with my writing is on Substack. It's called Restore First Principles. So with the easiest way to get there, restorefirstprinciples.com, spell it out. It'll direct you to the Substack site. I write about constitutional issues, how the founding fathers would feel about things within our government today. I firmly believe they wouldn't like it. So
you think so, huh? You think
so?
Oh,
yeah. So, yeah. I tend to rank pretty good 3 times a week off that particular stack, and so far it's going well. I'm put over 300 just this last week. Put out my 300th post.
Wow.
So been out there doing that for a while.
Good for you. Congratulations, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Ken? Did you see the first episode of Ken Burns' American Revolution last night?
No, I did not. Is that a new one? Because he's been doing stuff like that forever.
Right. Yeah, he completed a 6-part series on the American Revolution, and last night was the opening segment. I missed it too, so I was going to ask you what happened, and now we get nothing to talk about.
Well, you can never say that about me, I promise, David. So that's usually not a problem. If I could write as fast as I can do as much volume as I do about talking, it'd never be an issue to keep up with the need. No, I was actually down with a pretty bad migraine last night. I didn't even watch football. I didn't watch anything. I was in a dark hole trying to get over some serious head pain. So I definitely missed that, but I'll catch up.
Right. If you've been on Substack for 300 episodes, you must be making a fortune now.
Yeah. Well, no. Actually, you know what? I did it out of love for not only for writing, but about the whole concept behind it. And I really just was more about doing it because I enjoyed it. And my audience is growing. It's getting there, creating some more interest, shall we say, getting more interaction with my readers. So it's getting there. And thanks to, like Ken was saying, the other Ken was saying earlier about being on their newsletter and a couple others being in this position here, it's helping to spread the word. And that does my heart good, if nothing else, because I get things out there and help convention estates more than anything else.
Right. Okay.
All right. Ken Kashuba, remind me not to give Ken Whaley the opportunity to put a plug in here.
I got you.
He's already consumed about 4 minutes of our first segment.
We better bring on our last guest before he consumes all the donuts.
Just kidding. Okay. In this segment, let's see what we're all focusing on. And Gary, I'm going to let you lead things off, and let's hope your audio isn't cutting out. But you want to lead us off, Gary?
I would be happy to start.
Yeah.
And can you hear me okay? Am I coming through?
You are coming through okay now, yes.
Okay. So, okay. So what I want to talk about is essentially uh, the system is corrupt. The whole system is corrupt. And when I say the system, I'm talking about three sort of different areas that work together. One is the government. The second is the largest corporations, and the third one is the deep state. So when I say the government, not everybody in the government is corrupt, but essentially we know that we have the finest Congress that money can buy. And a great many of the people with the most power in Congress are really, they're working not for we the people, they're working for this blob of corrupt entities that control a great many things. The corporate part of it is the elites, the largest corporations, partly the military industrial complex. And then today, the other really powerful part of that is all of social media uh, that ties in with the third aspect of the deep state, which is deep state, kind of the intelligence community, and that promotes the propaganda and promotes all the views that that most people have in the world. And I'll give you two examples of what the result of this is. So one of the things is, I think it was RFK Jr. Last week said that more than 70% of the American people is suffering some kind of a chronic illness. And, but the blob, the correct blob, is not trying to make people healthy. It's using those people as a cash cow that it can milk for money. We see that primarily in the pharmaceutical industry, but sickness is very profitable for the government, and it keeps the corrupt system in place because people who are sick are not going to be worried about trying to push back against an out of control government. Another example of this we see is we have a growing wealth inequality problem in America, and really accelerated since the great financial crisis, 2008, 2009. The very top echelon of society has become extraordinarily much more wealthy than they were, whereas average people have gotten nowhere. And particularly young people are facing a real threat, unable to afford housing and buying their own home, things like that. And so, what is the corrupt system doing? It's promoting socialism to those people because socialism, communism allows the elite to stay in power and hand out crumbs to the masses while the elites maintain power and live very well. So when I say the whole system is corrupt, in that sense that those entities work together, and really it's why we're all here as part of the Convention of States. It's the way to overcome this corrupt system is to limit its power, put term limits in place, and try to put limits on the things that the federal government actually does so that power comes back to we the people. And it's important to do because we really are battling a corrupt system that, makes people sick, accelerates wealth inequality, and promotes propaganda that keeps most people thinking that this is just the way things are. So did I talk too long?
No. We're the solution to the problem then, huh?
The Convention of States is, I see, we are the solution of getting people back to the idea of self-governance, that we are in control of our own government. If we just would realize that, stop listening to the propaganda and start paying attention to government.
Okay, very interesting.
So that's how I see it. In some ways, this ties into, I think you're going to play a rant I did recently about that, two ways of looking at America. This kind of ties into that idea that the government wants us looking at things other than what's really going on.
Very
kind of
interesting.
Like the Wizard of Oz, huh?
What'd you say, Ken?
I said kind of like the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Eh?
Kind of like the Wizard of Oz. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Don't pay any attention to that man behind the curtain.
Right.
little later on in the program, we're going to play a video that Gary put together. May scare a lot of people, but he gives us a lot of good information on it. A lot of good information on it. Kind of ties very much into what he just talked about. So I don't know. I have to agree with you, Gary. I think there's certainly a good case for that. Yep. All right, David, you want to chime in on this?
I want to chime in on the part of it, the propaganda part, and it's not an official organization. These people don't necessarily have membership cards, but they do get together quite a bit. There's spouses that are married to each other who are, one is working in the government, the other is working in media somewhere, and I've often described these people as the lefty loony mainstream Democrat media, because it seems like Republicans can do no right. That doesn't make any difference which Republican. This Republican is really not able to do anything right. And one of the members of the lefty loony mainstream Democrat media that is not a member is the I mentioned that page before, and it's the Washington Examiner, and they have been relatively reliably conservative, at least for the most part. If you look at their website, most of their articles are about a conservative idea. But today's headline was the White House is trying to talk about affordability, and they're being drowned out by Epstein.
Yeah.
Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein. And so whose fault is that? So why is the White House or the Washington Examiner has suddenly stumbled on the solution to this problem? They have become a part of the problem. We spent the last 43 days wailing and yelling and screaming about a shutdown government and how we've got to get healthcare prices or healthcare insurance is out of control, and the ACA, the Unaffordable Care Act, is going to die on the vine. And I've always been very suspicious because of the first three syllables of that particular well-known insurance policy, the Obamacare policy.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder how much involved he is. But it seems like everybody is on the same page. ABC, NBC, CBS, NPR especially. I mean, you can just about count on them now doing 2.5 minutes of Epstein to start of every program. And all of a sudden, it's Epstein all the time, every time. Somehow, everybody forgets that Uncle Joe Biden had access to all these files, all these documents, all these tapes, all these videotapes, all this stuff for 4 years.
Yeah.
And never brought it up.
Yeah.
It's never been brought up. So somehow there's a connection between the Democrats and the major media. Now, Fox, fortunately, Newsmax is not in the game as well. Tucker Carlson seems to be on the outs with this particular group, but they stick together. They reinforce each other's positions. They run each other's stories. Was the AP story today? The AP story today was a kind of a silly attempt, and Western Journal, pulled the rug out from under them. But the AP had a story yesterday or the day before that there was 2 of the signatures on Donald Trump's pardons that were signed on the 7th were strikingly familiar, just about exact, just about word for word, jot for jot, tittle for tittle. And they were just they had experts in their story talking about handwriting experts that said, yeah, they're the same. They're the same. It's got to be the auto pen. That's the only way it can be. And the Western Journal reported and quoted a guy from the White House, said, no, I was there. I saw him sign it in person, live and in person. I saw him. I watched him with my very own eyes. And we don't use the auto pen here in this White House. But it's not a conspiracy in the normal sense that people sit around and have weekend meetings, but they all seem to get together along really, really well, and they support each other's positions, and you can just about lock into it, especially when it comes to Republicans and conservatives in general.
I was amazed, like you, David. It seemed like as soon as uh, the president signed the order to reopen the government,
Yep.
it
Right.
was like someone flipped a switch.
Yeah.
And it
Right.
immediately flipped over to Epstein,
Right.
the Epstein files, and
Yep.
it's amazing. And all across the media, it seemed like everybody, the switch affected almost everybody.
They're in it together.
It is.
Could I touch on that one little tidbit I wanted to add to what David said, and even that you touched on there, Dale? That morning when the various news organizations put out, I want to say it was 4 emails that came from some of the early Trump Epstein things going on, and claimed basically that one of the female victims, they didn't say the name of the victim, basically insinuated that Trump was involved, and so on and so forth. Well, once they dug into it a little bit more, they found that the quote victim that they were referencing, which by the way they had conveniently blocked out of those emails, had already made numerous public statements that Trump was not involved, had never had anything to do. She had never seen him on the island, etc. So
I think
it was
she had
nothing but
actually
a
written a
redirect.
book, I believe. I think she had written a book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Total
it's the
redirect.
gal that, yeah, it's the gal that committed suicide, Virginia
Yeah.
Yes.
Giuffre.
But by redacting the name, it made you feel, the viewer made you feel, oh, must be something wrong here. They're trying to hide her name, when in fact there wasn't any reason for that.
Oh, there.
It's amazing. It's amazing how anymore. Any of you watch 60 Minutes?
Sure. Oh yeah, every week.
I caught a little bit about a little of the intro Sunday night, and they were going to do a thing about some guy. I think he's a Chinese guy. Do you know what I'm talking about, David?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, his initials are CZ, and he's a billionaire, and he owns a number of high tech companies, and he's very big in crypto. And
well,
Trump just pardoned him for
yes,
something, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but
and I don't know what the pardon was for.
right.
But the implication was that Trump has some business relationship with this guy outside of the government. I mean, one of Trump's companies or something has a business relationship.
Actually, it's Eric and Don Jr.'s business. It's not.
Is it?
Yeah.
But you'll notice that they never mentioned Donald or Donald Jr. or Eric's name in conjunction with the company or this guy.
Yes.
Because they've already been sued once. And those guys are just waiting with their attorneys sitting by and said, we would love to add more of your CBS money to our pile. Be happy to. Go ahead and accuse me of something.
They painted, and I didn't watch any more of the program, so I have to admit I didn't watch. I don't know what happened, but I didn't hear the report that they made, but I said to myself, they gave you they were insinuating that there was something corrupt there between Trump and this and him doing the pardon and everything, and I just said to myself, I'll bet you there's much more to this story. That and there are reasons for this that they're not going to bring out. They're just going to try and paint a picture to leave the viewing public. Is that how it turned out, David? Did you watch the whole thing?
I did watch it out, and instead of being there much more, there is much more there. There wasn't as much there.
Okay.
All of they had was guesswork and supposition, and if this is this and that's that, and plus 2 + 2 must equal 6. I mean, it's got to. I mean, that's CBS. Oh, that's 60 Minutes game.
Yeah.
I mean, they've done that forever. That's their same old program, and they have. Don Hewitt was great at that.
Yeah.
They made it look like as soon as this Chinese guy deposited this one big deposit into this Bitcoin account or this crypto account, that's as soon as that went in, suddenly the pardon came about. So they really tried to connect it up as being, tit for tat, and not really quite. They couldn't really call it a quid pro quo, but it was bordering on it, and they sure made it look like Trump was, at the mercy of this guy, because if he pulled his money out, then suddenly this company goes belly up.
Their attorneys, CBS attorneys, will make sure that they don't make those accusations directly again.
Yeah.
I mean,
Again,
they will
that's the key
again.
word. Yeah.
They won't do it again. It's happened. It's happened at least that one time with the Kamala edits and all the rest of it. BBC will be paying up one of these days as well.
Yeah.
You think that'll eventually get to the point of some monetary?
Oh yeah.
settlement?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's no question that the speeches were edited. There was an hour's worth of time between the opening speech and the closing speech, and they cut all that information out and broadcast that as one single statement.
I mean, that has been done so many times. Somebody needs to pay a price for that. That's for sure.
And they will.
I can give you a very brief history. I think, Dale, we've talked before on the fact that I have worked in the news and magazine industry quite some time ago, spent about 15 years, camera work, audio, et cetera. Did a lot of work for 60 Minutes, CBS Evening News, that kind of thing. Long story short, one of my first tasks that way, we spent all day long chasing the story around when they were getting ready to do the 3 strikes law in California. And went to a prison, talked to a guy who got put away, 2 felonies, tried to steal a pair of pants. That was his 3rd felony. They up all the stuff. Anyway, long story short, when I got home and then watched it on the news, on the live broadcast, the work we had done, totally changed everything. Took stuff out of context, out of order. Unbelievable the difference. It was not that long after that said, I'm not sure I really want to work for these people anymore. So to see what they're doing now, they've just pulled the cover back and are not trying to hide it anymore like they did then.
Wow.
They were very subtle then, but now, it is just the covers are off. They're doing whatever they want to do and not caring until they get caught. I agree that BBS thing, that's going to come down to some serious money. They are so guilty. I mean, just so guilty. It's so obvious. So we shall see. Not until proven in the court of law. Yes. But in this country anyway. But yeah they did.
All right. Well, Ken, David, do you have anything more? Excuse me. David, do you have anything more to add? David?
He's not hearing us now. I don't think.
I don't think he's
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I did something to my screen, and I'm not sure what I did yet. But I couldn't hear you guys talking about. And I was about to say, "Oh, you're that Ken Whaley." Oh, yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. And you've got some inside information, and that's great.
All right.
They've been doing it for years.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Ken Whaley. What's on your mind?
Did you want my beef input about okay. Basically one of the things that's been making me a bit crazy, we all know beef prices have gotten crazy expensive lately. I mean, there really just is no way around that. And I happen to eat a lot of beef. I usually buy from a guy here, local, grass-fed, straight from the process, basically right from the butcher to my freezer. But still watching everything else go on, it has just made me a little bit antsy when I heard the other day that Trump was going to basically release some of the tariffs on Argentina and allow them to import a good deal more beef. I want to say it was 80. I want to say billion with a B pounds per year. I shouldn't hold me to those exact numbers. I'm trying to do this off the top of my head. But long story short, the fact that beef herds in this country are basically at almost not really an all-time low. They're as low as they've been since I want to say it was 1960, mid 60s. Cattle have been, well, for a lot of reasons, there are just less cattle than there have been for many, many years. And so for Trump to say, okay, well, we want to reduce prices of beef, I get that. So he is reducing, or in the process of reducing, tariffs on Argentina to allow them to import more beef. Quick note on that, it's all lower end lean beef to make hamburger, strip steak, not strip steaks, I'm sorry, carne asada type beef, that kind of thing. Lower end on the scale. We're not talking ribeyes or, sirloin or any of those kind of things, low end meat. But they're going to flood the market in essence with a lot of low priced beef, which will hurt the ranchers here in this country significantly. Okay. And a quick kind of and I'm waiting to see whether or not that goes through or not. I know the ranchers are speaking up. This is not good. It won't help them, because one of the other things that has been a real issue for the ranchers in this country is that for quite some time, about 85% of the beef processed in this country is all handled by 4 companies. Okay. What is it? JBS USA, Tyson Foods, Cargill Meat, I'm hoping I'm saying that correct, a National Beef Packing Company. Roughly 85% of all beef processed in this country goes through those 4 companies. In my book, that's a monopoly amongst those 4. It's not a one company, but it is a monopoly. And there have been a lot of insinuation that they have colluded with each other to keep prices high and processing costs low. Add to that the fact that they use a lot of, shall we say, immigrant labor to do the meat cutting, cheap labor in essence, and that reduces their cost more. The idea being really that our ranchers are getting hurt. And with only those 4 companies to go through, they basically control the prices of everything. And if that continues, then add on to that the costs of everything having gone up over the past 5 years or so, the feed, the vet bills, all the things to get that beef to market have gotten more expensive, while their share for the ranchers themselves has dropped significantly. And so it's really creating a bad situation. And if you're a meat eater like I am, that makes me real nervous, because I know even last time I went in, I usually buy in roasts, cut my own. Last time the roast that I usually buy had gone up by $4.50 a pound from about 2 months ago when I bought it last time at a chef supply store. So yeah, I'm concerned about that. I really am.
Wow.
Wow.
Why has the cattle crowd, the herds gone down over the years? What's caused that, do you think? Changes
as much
in
as
diet?
anything. Well, yeah. I think as much as anything, most of the ranchers that I kind of reviewed and watched were talking about drought as much as anything, especially in the South. They just don't have the feed. Well, let me rephrase that. The natural graze that the cattle would normally live off of.
Yeah.
And so in order to bring other feed in for them, it's very expensive because the alfalfa has gone up. Everything has gone up because the inflationary factor. That's its own topic altogether. But mainly they all quote a drought, and they have all been lowering their the size of their herds in order to reduce overhead costs, just so they can stay in business. And of course, if they have less heifers, I'm hoping I'm using that term correctly, they're making less babies. Less babies mean less beef overall, and slowly it's almost like they're not reproducing enough calves to replenish their own herds, or they're selling those off and not keeping them up to date. Number of reasons for that, but that's the main one I heard, was the drought just causing them to have to reduce herd size.
I have a neighbor just down the road in northern Minnesota who is in essence this year has doubled the size of his herd.
Really?
And, yeah, I mean it's a huge black Angus, and it's beautiful cows. And yeah, there's little every spring, I think it is, or maybe every fall, when they separate the heifers, the kids, the children out from the herd to sell them off to process the meat and all the rest of that stuff, you can hear the mamas crying for miles
Oh,
and
now
miles
when I eat my
and
steak later, you're gonna
miles.
break my heart doing
Oh
that.
man, you drive by on the highway and you could hear the cows. Oh no, you're taking my son. No, no.
Wow.
But he's
David, I still
doing
Or
tell
daughter.
no, or daughter, yeah, possibly.
yeah,
But this particular guy is doing rather well. I mean, and
good,
I think
good.
and I think it may not be industry wide as but I know beef prices are up.
Yeah.
And why? And I'm not sure.
Well, one of the things
Yeah.
that I've
I,
seen, if I can take another minute, Dale, and one of the things that I've seen quite a number of ranchers around here do, and that I've seen online as they're doing this, basically they're forming co-ops, and you can literally buy into and buy a cow or two, a heifer, as it were, help pay for their raising, et cetera, get your own grass-fed beef, and then they do the butchering, processing, and send it to you like you would get from anywhere else. And I understand that has helped a lot, especially for those that are concerned about all the antibiotics and hormones and filler feed just to get the cows to eat something.
That's very interesting.
I know here where I live, the grass has been high. Well, I'm sorry, rephrase that. The grass has been very weak this year because we've had so little rain through the course of the summer. And so most of the beef ranchers up here, again, to David's point, all black Angus up here that I'm aware of, they've been really struggling and having to supplement with alfalfa because there just hasn't been enough grass to feed
Wow.
all the cows that are here. So it depends on where you're at, I guess. So that's an
Yeah.
interesting point, David.
Well, I'm kind of, gee, I haven't had a steak in a long time. You're making me hungry, Kim. But I kind of want to tie
think-
into what you're talking about here, and my topic is the affordability issue that's everybody's talking about now. I recall a report that I heard not too long ago was that Reagan's economic policies really didn't take effect until the second year of his term, his first term. Was it his first term? Yeah. It was like the second or third year before his policies really took effect and the economy did a turnaround. I'm thinking that's what's happening now. I could be wrong, but a lot of the stuff that that Trump has put in place, it's just getting started, really. I pay close attention to gas prices in our area, and we're not seeing any drastic drop in gas prices. We get now we don't have the $4 or $5 prices anymore. I will grant that, but we'll get down to maybe like 267 a gallon, and then geez, overnight it could jump to 329, and it could be that kind of fluctuation. So I'm not seeing any $2 a gallon gasoline here yet. I don't know if any of you are seeing that kind of thing, but and my goodness, the energy prices, the effect that has had on the cost of energy and the effect that that's had on food prices during the past 4 years are tremendous. So the Republicans have got to sell this message, I think, but I really think that we just haven't had time for those policies to kick in yet. What do you all think about that? Does that
Yeah,
make
I think you're right as far as the time has to go by. Now there's all kinds of things that are going to come online after the first of the year, like no tax on tips and no tax on Social Security. And I live in one of the 7 states that still taxes Social Security. The rest of you guys are just fine, but you're one of the other ones, Ken.
really?
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Very few states state income tax,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
and
State.
eventually, yeah, that's got to go away. Now, what Trump has suggested or put in the big beautiful bill has been federal taxes on Social Security and a tax on tips, tax on overtime, and those are the things that are going to come online and be into the system after the first of the year. So there's going to be a change, I think, after January, maybe February. I've seen gas prices come down. Uh, on average, up in the northern Minnesota, the gas prices tended to be above 3 gallons when Biden was in office, but since he's gone, it's I think I saw as low as 249 last week.
Really?
So
Go
no,
ahead.
it's been 249, 259, 269 right in that neck of the woods.
Yeah.
So that's happened up here.
We haven't seen a whole lot of gas price drop either. And part of that is that we're so close to Washington, Oregon, California, that ring of,
Mm-hmm.
the real crazy pricing. That's my understanding anyway, that's a lot of the reason the prices have a harder time coming down here. Dale, when you mentioned 285, that's like almost 50, 60 cents less than what I pay right now for regular gasoline.
Wow.
And that's down from 385, 395, early in the summer.
Yeah.
So it has come down for us. It's kind of settled in about 329. I think I saw 323 at Walmart a week or so ago. For me, that's better. And everywhere we go up here, it's a drive. There's nothing that's right around the corner from
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
It's literally 20 minutes to the nearest grocery store. So gas prices have a big impact on what we do up here, and tractors, all the other equipment, it all makes a difference that way.
Well,
But
I think this is a message that's got to be sold. It's got to be get out there more, I think. Ken
And you won't be able to get that message from the main media.
Yeah, that's right.
Because especially now, they were selling the message 2 years ago, but they're not going to sell it now.
No, absolutely not.
Ken Kashuba, we only got a couple minutes left in this segment.
All right. Well, I'm going to tag right along what you're talking about there, and gas prices. I'm looking at something that could that needs to be watched over the next few weeks. Our buddies out there in the Middle East, known as Iran, are suddenly shaking their fists again in whatever way they can, and I think they're strategically looking at a place that affects a large part of the global economy, especially when it comes to oil. Now, the Iran confirmed that its elite Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps seized a tanker in the Gulf of Hormuz that was transporting what it described as unauthorized cargo. Now they've done this in the past and say it's smuggling and other types of things that they're reining in. But what it's turned out to be is the vessel was sailing from Singapore, and I'm going to get this wrong because I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but it's spelled Sharjah. So Sharjah in the UAE was intercepted on Friday and diverted into Iranian territorial waters. Now, they tracked and seized this vessel following a judicial order. The IRGC said, adding that the cargo of 30,000 tons of petrochemical products was being transported in violation of Iranian law. Now, I think if people are familiar, most people are familiar with the Straits of Hormuz. It's basically 750 feet long and about 105 feet wide. So you can understand the strategic portion of the world that this little piece of water represents. And by Iran, obviously at this point, I think trying to flex a little muscle here might be trying to send a message. And it'll be interesting to see what happens over the course of the next couple of weeks as far as this is concerned. As basically this tanker has been seized. I see, Iran will stop at nothing. And even though that we've now eliminated their nuclear capabilities, I think they're looking for another way to put some fear into the world and basically will affect gas prices. I think this represented I think it says here, the global shipping route through which about 20% of all traded oil and significant volumes of liquefied natural gas pass annually. So, I mean, it's not 50%, but 20% is enough to make prices.
That's significant. Yeah, it is significant. Yes.
So, here we are again with Iran, going to stick the finger in the eye of Donald Trump, basically at this point, or the United States, the big American devil.
Mhm.
They do it because they can, and in that strait, I think we've got problems if we don't get that under control in some way. So I don't know if you guys see any answer to that, or how we might even effectively look at that. But I think Iran has obviously a very strategic position there, located where they are, and they're going to use everything they can to try and make the global world recognize, that who they are. I guess I don't know.
I don't know. Get the bombers ready again. I guess I don't know.
They I mentioned it in the before we started talking, but there's a story out today on Zero Hedge about the Isla Margarita. It's down near Venezuela and supposedly was taken over by Hezbollah, and we know who Hezbollah is being paid for.
Sure.
I mean, they're involved in that, and that's probably one of the major reasons for the buildup in the Caribbean.
Huh.
So,
and I'm going to be very, very self-centered towards the United States, MAG all the way, etc. As our energy production comes up to speed, those kind of things, as far as we're concerned, will affect us less and less. We already are one of the major producers of liquefied natural gas. And as soon as, let's face it, it takes time for oil companies to ramp up and get production up to where they were when Trump left office last time. If we can get that going, then those things won't bother us. Will it still impact the rest of the world? Absolutely. And that is still scary if Iran's flex a muscle that way.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're out of time on this segment. So I want to thank everyone for their contributions. I know we lost Gary there briefly, but he's back on now. Can you hear us okay, Gary?
I can hear you fine.
All right. I guess he's switched internet service and he had some problem here, but glad you could join us back. So David, Ken, Gary, thank you all very much. And Ken Whaley, we'll see you. Don't go away. We'll see you a little later on in the program. So thanks a lot, guys. Thank you very much.
Glad to help out. Thanks much.
All right, another good segment. Another good In Focus segment.
Covered a lot of good ground again. Yep.
Yeah, we sure did. Sure did. Well, let's jump right in to our next segment here. And speaking of guests that cause trouble, this next guest here, he's got a long reputation with us. But we're going to bring on Dr. Dan Stock to give us the fourth and final episode of RFK, Make America Healthy Again. So let's bring Dan on there. Hello, Dan.
Hi, guys. Sorry I don't have a better mustache to twirl for you.
Oh, no. Always a pleasure to see you, Dan. Dan, you've this is the fourth and final episode of your series on RFK, Make America Healthy Again. And briefly, if you would, before you get into this final one, give us a real brief summary of the first three segments, if you would, please.
Sure. Well, I'm going to start off with a disclaimer that even though I am a senior fellow at the Independent Medical Alliance that has been working with the Department of Health and Human Services, that everything I say today is my own opinion, not of any division of the Department of Health and Human Services or the Independent Medical Alliance. But for people,
I'm glad you remembered that because I forgot to ask you to do that. So
I'm trying to be better at politics.
Thank you. All right.
So we started off with hey, what is it that Secretary Kennedy inherited? Which was basically a group of people heavily financially conflicted and selected on the basis of the fact that they were able to ignore good scientific method in order to get products passed through that would make a market preferable to somebody who is pushing money through the system.
Yeah.
And he's been systematically dismantling that and replacing it with scientific method as a way to make these decisions. So in our first couple of episodes, we actually went through the food industry and what he was doing to try and fix that. And then we went through what he was doing at the CDC, which brings us to the last major part of the MAHA operation of which is the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, which controls how any product gets to market. So
Okay.
I'm ready to go when you are.
Take it away.
Well, I think the first thing people should know that what Mr. Kennedy did after getting many people to resign their positions because they were useful ignoramuses was to resist the call of a lot of people in the medical freedom movement who wanted him to remove products from the market without doing vetted scientific research. We all had scientific data that strongly suggested they're probably bad, but the best sources of data and calculations had not been made yet. And so one of the things Mr. Kennedy did was to resist the urge to just start removing things from the market without actually having a scientific argument where he could say, hey, we're going to bring this out of the murky area. But one of the things he did do was say, look, what we don't have is any good research that modified RNA technology being used for vaccines is doing anything good. So he said, I can't remove them on the basis of the fact that they're bad, but I can stop investing research in them because they have not shown to be good. And he canceled many billions of dollars of research and NIH grants that had been given to companies to develop modified RNA technologies for pathogen-mediated disease. This was certainly quite a shot into the pharma industry, which had been planning on being able to make this stuff up with impunity without having to do scientific research on it because it was all going to be paid for by the United States. So effectively what Mr. Kennedy did was say, you can develop that stuff if you want to, but so far the United States investment in this technology has not proven to be useful, and we're not going to expend any more money into this. You carry on if you want to. And then the next thing he did after that was to say, you know what? One of the problems of these vaccines you have is you only have placebo-controlled randomized double-blinded blinded trials, none of them double-blinded, but you only have blinded trials on the elderly and people with risk factors. So what we're going to say is that you actually cannot get a FDA approval for vaccines in the future for any other group unless you have double-blind, placebo-controlled randomized trials that show that they are safe and effective for that group. And in fact, one of the people at the FDA who was in charge of reviewing these things, Dr. Peter Marks, when he said, you're going to issue that order, he said, no, I won't. He actually forced him to resign, saying, no scientific method says we can't approve these things unless they have that. And then to back it up, he removed the emergency use authorization for all of these vaccines. That's something people should know about, is that when a vaccine can be authorized, meaning you're allowed to use it during emergencies, or it can be FDA approved. And that for most of the people in the country who were getting these shots, they were getting them not because they were approved by the FDA, but because they were authorized under emergency use. And so Mr. Kennedy said, that's going to go away. There's no emergency anymore. So now you can't get these things unless you can get them a placebo-controlled randomized double-blinded trial that will bring this up. Secondly, he installed as the head of the what's called VRBAC, the Vaccines and Biologics Division of FDA, Dr. Vinny Prasad, who came out and said, yes, that's going to be very necessary. We're not going to go ahead and continue rubber stamping modified RNA vaccines, or any vaccine for that matter, unless it has a placebo-controlled randomized double-blinded trial with it. That dovetailed nicely with the work going on at the CDC, where the ACIP committee, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices that Mr. Kennedy reconstituted, we spoke about in the last segment, came out and said, you know, we've reviewed the data on modified RNA technology, and we can no longer authorize a blanket recommendation that anybody take these shots. Instead, those should all be discussions that you have with your individual physician. Because the CDC no longer was giving all of the modified RNA a blanket, everybody or these people should take them. It basically made them harder for any state to mandate this because they were mostly based upon CDC recommendations. But interesting, as we segue into the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, at the FDA, there was a sister organization that advised the FDA, full of subject experts who were supposed to advise the FDA commissioner. The members of this panel were almost entirely being paid by pharma. They had enormous conflicts of interest. So even though they did get a salary for performing on that duty of advising the FDA director, their opinion was always financially conflicted. And Mr. Kennedy fired all of them. They were all required to file conflict of interest documents. Most of them had not done so in the last 10 years. But he completely fired every one of them and has been trying to get people to replace them, but it's been very difficult because everyone who wanted to be on the panel has learned that you have to do the same thing that he required for the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. You can't have a conflict of interest or you can't sit on the panel, which means, of course, if you have a conflict of interest, you'll never be valuable to the pharmaceutical industry, and therefore you can't get on the panel unless you're willing to kiss the pharmaceutical industry goodbye.
This conflict of interest, this has been a theme throughout almost every part that you've presented. Am I correct?
You are very correct. As a matter of fact, it has probably been the thing that Mr. Kennedy has worked the hardest on in saying people who have conflicts of interest may not make decisions on these products.
Yeah.
They still invite the people with conflicts of interest to come and testify and join that public debate that Mr. Kennedy has been trying to foster. But they don't get to vote on the decision, which means, of course, if you can't have a conflict of interest, well, you're not much use to somebody who likes conflicted interest, the decision making.
And I think I recall you saying, Dan, that these conflicts have developed over decades. They're not something that just happened in the Biden administration alone. This is developed over decades. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, and not just the last 2 decades.
Okay.
These advisory committees, as a matter of fact, I don't believe there has ever been a vaccine come to the advisory committee that the advisory committee said, no, that should not be approved. They even approved vaccines that the FDA later had to pull off the market because they were hurting people. But they sailed through these advisory committees. You know, people who have their financial blinders on can justify a great many things. Look at Anthony Fauci. And these people have been selected for many decades because of the fact that they were not objective in their decision making. And it has been one of the foremost things that Mr. Kennedy has done is to make sure that that simply cannot happen any longer. If you're going to make the decision, you can't have a conflict of interest. As a matter of fact, one of the other things that we've seen happen at the FDA was the director of the VRBAC, the Vaccines and Biologic that he chose, Vinay Prasad, made a decision to pull something that had been approved for early use because it was showing harm already, and he pulled it. And of course, pharma threw a lot of flack his way and even forced him to step down. But at that point, Mr. Kennedy actually went to bat for him and said his decision was scientifically based. All he was saying was, we were letting you use these without a placebo-controlled randomized blinded trial. He saw signs of harm and did what he was supposed to do, which was stop them until you can get a placebo-controlled randomized blinded trial. Therefore, he's done his job and actually convinced him to come back, and the Trump administration accepted him back, thumbing his nose at the pharmaceutical industry, saying, no, you will not be able to throw that weight around here and hammer one of my deputies and throw them out simply because he did something that was not financially good for you, as long as he had a scientifically justifiable reason for doing so, which Mr. Prasad did. And this is the kind of change we're seeing slowly but surely happening at Health and Human Services. There are a lot of people to fire at Health and Human Services. This is a deeply entrenched area that's of the deep state, with people who are very professional for ignorance, and getting them out one at a time has been very laborious. But Mr. Kennedy has committed himself to it, despite all of the attacks that have been lodged against him.
How long is it going to take do you think, to turn this whole thing around? Are we going to see some improvements in certain areas and take longer in other areas, or?
You know,
What do you think?
there will be improvements all along the way. At the end of the day, if there's one failing that Mr. Kennedy, I don't think, has grappled with yet, is that government cannot be involved in healthcare at all. Healthcare is simply too complex for a government to tackle. I think Mr. Kennedy still has a big belief that there is somehow government is going to contribute to this well. And if it is, he's going to make sure that it contributes in the unconflicted way so it can do its best. But the only real solution to this, the inflationary prices, is going to be getting the government out of healthcare completely. That's going to cause us an inflationary process. Even if we had wonderful people making all the decisions, it would force inflation to have them make those decisions and control that money. But yes, I think we're going to see steady, slow improvement. As a matter of fact, there's a battle going on right now over getting the right information in the hands of the ACIP committee so they can review the modified RNA and it possibly change the recommendation from you should discuss this with your doctor to maybe you should not take this at all. We recommend against you're even discussing this with your doctor. Don't take this vaccine. But again, Mr. Kennedy has not rushed to that. Instead, he has been establishing a working group that will have the freedom to look at all of the data. The big squeeze has been the deep state did not want that committee to be able to look at the data that they didn't want it to look at. And Mr. Kennedy has steadfastly held tight on that, saying, no, we're going to have that. So to the degree that government can help healthcare, it will do the best that it can. Or I should say, I think he's going to minimize the damage that government interference in healthcare will do. Certainly better than any Secretary of Health and Human Services has done since the damn thing was created.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. Ken, we got anybody making any comments or anything?
Comments or questions at this point? No, I think everybody's just really trying to absorb and understand all this, and certainly, we appreciate Dr. Dan for the wealth of knowledge that he brings to the table, that we can finally understand that somebody in government is actually doing something. And I agree with you, Dan. At this point, we have to get government out of the business. That's not part of the constitutional arrangement that we had with government. Yes. So that's part of our fight, and I know that that this is something that we really need to rein in, and possibly at this point look at down the road having a convention that reins in our overreaching government.
Well, as a matter of fact, don't forget that Dr. Benjamin Rush, one of the people at the original Constitutional Convention, proposed the idea that there should be an 11th Bill of Rights that actually restricts the government from having any interference in healthcare.
Good point. Good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
This was something he saw coming, 300 plus years ago, 300 years ago, 250 years ago, that he saw this coming. And, we should recognize that until we can get the government out of healthcare, it is very good that at least Secretary Kennedy is trying to reestablish scientific method as a way for the government to make its decisions instead of financial conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Very right.
Good deal. Dan, thank you very much for giving us this series. And there's more to come on this, I'm quite sure. So we want you to come back another time and update us on what's happening. Okay.
I'll be happy to do that. Thanks for having me
All
on,
right.
Dale. Thanks,
Dan.
Jim.
Thank you very much, bud. Thank you.
Night, Dan.
Let me get Dan off of here. All right, there we go. Very interesting. Hard to follow some of it, but very interesting.
Well, it does. It is very complicated, and obviously the intertwining of big companies, big corporations, big pharma, everything that goes involved, and it ties in with what Gary was saying earlier. It's I think we just we try and just go on and live simple lives and find out that for decades things have been twisted and controlled by forces that none of us were fully aware of. So.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yep. All right. Well, let's shift topics here to something that I think we all know a little bit more about and can relate to, and that's sanctuary cities and what's happening in the crime scene in these cities. So we're going to bring Ken Whaley back, and Ken has put together some information on sanctuary cities crime. I think I'm saying this right, but maybe I better get him on here and he can get us straightened out. Okay.
That sounds good.
Okay. There he is again. Hello, Ken.
Welcome back, Ken. Oh, I'm sorry. You guys welcome me back. All good.
Yeah, we're welcoming you back. Yes.
And I'll tell you, that's a tough act to follow. That was so well stated. Dan is just, man, that was tough to
He's
follow.
very good on that. I mean, that's he is a doctor, so that's in his bailiwick. We would say yes.
And that is actually a big pet peeve of mine, the pharmaceutical companies. But that's for Dan to talk about, not me. So we're on for it.
All right, Ken, did I say it right? Sanctuary City Crime, is that the title?
Well, basically, yes. I think I spread things out a little bit more than just focusing on the crime.
Okay.
I basically set up a 3-step walkthrough, for lack of a better way to put it. We're going Trump's first term, the Biden years, as I've taken to calling that, and then of course what's going on now. But I'll break all that down and get into it in a little more detail as we walk through it. But
Okay.
like I say, it's just more a matter of walking through things. And I have to say, I came up with some stuff that surprised me as far as the crime, especially crime stats go. But I don't want to get ahead of the cart here, and
Okay.
we'll go from there.
All right, take it away.
Okay. So as you mentioned, Dale, wanted to talk about sanctuary cities, sanctuary policies. One of the things that I kind of had to remind people of, I've talked to several folks about this as I kind of prep for this segment, was really that many people think, oh, it's just buzzwords, it's campaign talk and that kind of stuff. But no, it's a lot more than that. I think the three of us here, and certainly probably most of the folks listening to the show, are aware of that. But I was surprised how many people, oh, it's just talk, it's nothing really that means anything, etc. But they really are real policies adopted by real jurisdictions, New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles, Seattle, just to name a couple. There's many. And of course, those policies have real consequences in each of those jurisdictions. But as I mentioned, I'm going to walk through 3 very different phases of federal enforcement. First, Trump's first term, I'll get that right, the Biden years, as I termed it, and where we stand now as we head into 2026, and what may happen going forward with this. So each period kind of tells a very different story about the crime, the cooperation, and the rule of law in particular when it comes to sanctuary cities, or I should call it sanctuary policies, to be honest, because it really is policies within these different jurisdictions. So I wanted to walk through this. So going back again to Trump's first term, you really had pretty steady cooperation from a lot of the states about immigration in particular, which is really the heart of what this is all about. Those were all red states. The big deep blue states, they took a different approach and drew a big line in the sand. Again, most folks are going to know the Chicago flat out refused to honor ICE detainers, still is. We've seen that recent activity, shall we call it, going on. New York City limited cooperation to almost nothing. They literally would not. Well, anyway, I won't get ahead of myself. And of course, California at that point in time declared itself a sanctuary state and basically blocked local jails within the state from turning people over to ICE unless the crime fit a very, very narrow list of crimes. I was surprised they even had those that they would release to, because of course those were the people that Trump's, or ICE, I should say, was truly looking for. Because as mentioned, under the Trump administration, they really prioritized criminal offenders, right? And they did get a lot of them off the street in that first term. Didn't make nearly as big a deal out of it, but they did do a lot of good getting those people off the street in that first term. But then that brings us really right into the problem, and basically it still exists to this day, is when jails in sanctuary jurisdictions refuse to hand someone over, ICE doesn't necessarily just stop and say, yeah, okay, they won't let us have them, so we're not going to worry about that person anymore. A lot of these people are rapists, murderers, multiple DUIs, on and on and on. So they're going to go after them. And they also know that they're not in the country legally. So they have every right to go wherever they need to go to try and capture these folks. So they still had their job to do. But by not being able to easily go in and gather these folks in within the jail where everything's controlled, no extra issues going on. Basically, the agents had to go out in the neighborhoods and onto front porches and into the workplaces. So instead of conducting transfers safely in the jails themselves, they went out into the neighborhoods. And as a result, you get what most critics are calling collateral arrests. So basically meaning people may not have a state conviction. In other words, no DUIs, no convictions within a state, but they're still here illegally, which is a violation of federal law. So, and I think people tend to forget that distinction. Okay. I think they also choose to forget it because it's politically convenient to forget it. I think we all understand where I was going with that. Okay. But so the data from the first Trump term showed something that surprised me, though. This is the point I made earlier. Violent crime, because the statistics are finally getting out from that far back, appeared to actually drop in many sanctuary jurisdictions, which surprised me. I mean, I would think most people would be surprised. But when I dug into this, what I found, I found what makes all of this actually make sense. So it wasn't, of course, that illegal offenders or offenses were suddenly gone. I think a major factor, and in the research I did kind of prove this out, that in all of this appears to be that fewer people were willing to report crimes in these jurisdictions because they felt like they would get swept up in the enforcement. In other words, when they'd go into these neighborhoods to gather these bad guys up, anybody else that happened to be stopped and not legally in this country got dropped in as well. But so basically, the crime didn't necessarily crime dropped on paper, but didn't necessarily in the reality on the streets. And I think that's something that is misleading when you look at the crime stats and they say, crime has dropped. Yeah, there's a reason for it, at least based on what I found. So anyway,
okay.
Oh yeah, and that surprised me because I had never thought into that depth of it as to why that was going to be the case. Okay, so anyway, pretty complicated picture, and I think honestly the mainstream media never explains that clearly. And personally, I think that's on purpose. I even mentioned earlier they don't tell the truth often these days, but that's its own topic altogether. Okay,
I would agree. I would agree with that. Knowing that this topic was coming up, I did a little bit of searching myself, and it seems to be what you say is very true. The headlines and the articles that are written tend to say, "Oh, hey, crime numbers are down. They're down," but they don't go in and tell you to the depth that you just relayed to us. Is the fact that, well, we're not able to get them in the jails. We have to go out and find them, and as you said, and clearly described, they get swept up in this because, hey, they're illegal. But then you get the argument on the other side. Well, they have no criminal record, but they've been working at the local farm for the last 10 years. They're good citizens, so they shouldn't go. So, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but to me, that becomes very frustrating because to me, it always comes down to the term, well, legal and illegal. Do we have a definition for either? And if I'm driving illegally and I get pulled over, does something happen to me? Yeah, it does. So it's always a struggle when I hear that, but I appreciate you going into the depth of why the numbers are lower. And again, the papers and the articles I read all led me to believe, oh no, this is don't look over here. This is not really happening.
Yeah, that curtain, as we talked about earlier, don't look behind this curtain. It's actually over here that you want to be looking, the misdirection, as it were. Yeah. But your point is well taken, Ken, and spot on, to be honest. And there is more to it. I would get ahead of myself in talking about it, but long story short, often the sanctuary areas, that's a better way to put it, because they're cities, states, etc., they often don't report crimes. They often underreport the crimes, let people out without actually going through a trial. We all know about that, especially in some place like New York, and that applies to anybody because of the cash bail aspect. So that also drives down those numbers. The FBI numbers basically showed me that the homicide rate is down through the late part of the Biden years, but it's very unrealistic numbers because of all the things that have gone on along that way. So
Very interesting.
but it all kind of ties together that way. We're 1/3 way through, so I don't want to get too sidetracked.
Didn't mean to sidetrack you. No.
Okay, no worries. Because then, as I mentioned, I called it the Biden years, which I'm so glad are behind us. That was just such a rough time for this country. But basically, the pendulum of the whole immigration aspect, as we all know, swung really hard back in the opposite direction. Let's face it, the border effectively collapsed. Millions of undocumented individuals, I'll spit that out, were released into the country, and also even helped into the interior of the country under a notice to report, which involved minimal vetting and no meaningful tracking. We all know they put them on planes, landed them in the middle of the night in all sorts of airports everywhere, and millions of these individuals got deposited all over the country, with literally nothing that the more conservative side of the world could do much of anything about. So, and one thing I wanted to really touch on with that point, a whole lot of people on the right, I'll use that term generically, myself included, genuinely believe this was done on purpose. Everything I could find said, let's face it, you don't look Congress in the eye, and now I'm going to draw a blank on the guy's name, Biden's gentleman that controlled all that, his interior secretaries said, oh no, we got the border under control, yet there's 400,000 people a day or however many it was coming across. That's not control. Now we have it under control, but it was not under control. That lied through their teeth to us. And I feel that that there was reason. In other words, there were intentional political choices made designed to reshape the electorate, overwhelm local systems, and create a dependency that benefited one party over the other. And I think one of the things that I try and make sure everybody remembers every chance I get is that dependency allows for control. If the government feeds you and the government gives you housing and the government gives you all these things, can just as easily take it away. So you're going to do whatever you can to keep that master of yours happy, right? Huge, big thing as far as I'm concerned with regards to this whole aspect of this. So one of the other things I found was that a lot of the people kind of saying this the loudest from the right actually live in sanctuary jurisdictions. I have a good friend lives in Southern California. I've known the guy for 45 years or thereabouts. Still lives down there. I had to get out. I couldn't deal with it anymore. He has a lot of reasons to stay, but he's the first one to say, exactly this point. This was all done on purpose. It's so obvious. There's so many of them. So I think honestly, they welcomed the illegal immigrants in, and then also the areas then became the first to scream for federal help when their budgets imploded and crime shot up. We all saw that happen in every one of these sanctuary areas. They became overloaded with people. They overloaded their systems, their school systems, their health systems, etc. And then suddenly they decided they had to beg for federal money. Chicago declared an emergency. Massachusetts started commandeering hotels and school gymnasiums to place these individuals in. And of course, then even started getting further out in the country, especially around Chicago, into the suburbs, and taken over gymnasiums, on and on and on, any place to put these folks. And the locals had very little ability to push back on that, shall we say. So, and meanwhile, of course, the courts in left-leaning states almost always took the side of the sanctuary governments against federal enforcement. So that's a normal ploy for the left. Immediately take things to court, find a judge that is sympathetic towards you, block what's going on. And there's probably 50 things we could touch on about that right now. But yeah, most people that I know of and that I've talked to feel that this was a coordinated attack on this country. Okay. Now, whether you agree or not, the perception is really what matters there. Because, of course, perception is driven by observable behavior. Let's face it, these areas are refusing ICE detainers. They're releasing offenders back onto the streets. They're blocking federal cooperation with local police, and then turning around and blaming Washington for the consequences. It's all their fault, or all Washington's fault. So I have to state that while crime didn't go up everywhere, the chaos caused by all of this certainly did. And that kind of brings us into stage 3 of this, Trump's second term. Okay. Personal bit of strategy here, maybe thought is a better way to put it. I think we are better off now because Trump didn't win his second term right after. It would have just been a continuation of everything that took place in the first term. The impeachments, the launch, the pushback, right on down the line. He went away and he learned and he gathered a strong team and he built himself up to be ready to do this. So when he, I should say, and he got his administration in, when they came back into office early in January 20th, if I remember correctly, they actually officially listed sanctuary jurisdictions and demanded written explanations or changes within those jurisdictions. They're threatening serious funding cuts. Some things they can't cut because purse strings are controlled by Congress, but certain things that are a little more on the edge of that, they've been able to cut a significant amount of funds from a lot of these places. But of course, as usual, there's a lot of court cases going on. They obviously have been able to deploy into the interior interior of the sanctuary areas where jails refuse to cooperate or forced to not cooperate. I should qualify that. And then, of course, they've begun doing the benefit eligibility enforcement under what's called, this is a mouthful, the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act. Yeah, exactly. I had to look that one up, I'll tell you. So that basically is a 1996 welfare reform law that limits which immigrations, apparently some can actually get federal benefits, but it limits which immigrants can get those benefits and requires immigration status verification. Well, let's face it, the immigration status verification has not been happening, but that basically is the legal backbone behind the new benefit eligibility crackdowns under the Trump administration as they're going forward. All that said, okay, really is circling back to the whole thing of the crime, which really was what this is supposed to be all about. Has we actually seen crime reduction tied to these new efforts? Now, the Trump administration, of course, claims yes. The independent data that I found with the FBI, et cetera, says, yeah, it's not really a truly proven point. But that is with the caveat that I touched on a little bit earlier. So nationwide, crime has dropped, especially homicides. But the researchers that pull all that data together can't truly tie that to sanctuary policies yet. They're working on it, but they can't do it yet. You might think, well, why not? I mean, if they have crime in a given area, they have crime in a given area. But sanctuary policies, if you think about it, really actually haven't changed much since Trump's first term. If anything, they've kind of heightened those policies even more. And of course, the big blue cities are still refusing to cooperate with ICE. We see that daily on the news. Okay. So really that means that ICE is still forced to go and do neighborhood sweeps, and which always catch people beyond the intended targets that they have. But here's where the politics and the reality of this all kind of collide. When someone criminal immigrants, what they mean is that no state convictions of that immigrant, to the point you made, Ken. Every single one of them has violated federal immigration law, a misdemeanor on the first entry into the U.S. and a felony on the second. And many of these folks have been back and forth across the border numerous times, every time they've been stopped, detained, and the truth kind of comes out about them. Okay. So sanctuary cities want that distinction blurred, best way to put it. ICE, of course, wants it to be cleared up. And the average American, you and I, we're all kind of stuck in the middle, kind of saying, okay, what's really happening here? So that said, have ICE's recent operations actually reduced crime in those cities? Not in any way that can be measured honestly, not yet, at least, as I mentioned, because the truth is those cities haven't changed their policies. And if the jurisdictions just keep refusing cooperation, the enforcement dynamics never change. So you can't point to a clean, measurable result. which of course is frustrating because that weakens the federal approach. If they can't prove reduction of crime based on ICE activities, the left then uses that gap in data to argue that ICE operations are failing and even hurting these sanctuary areas. In a way, that approach really does make sense. But I wanted to explain that. Again, I kind of touched on this earlier. But one of the big problems with tying crime rates to sanctuary policies is that sanctuary cities have every incentive to underreport or reclassify crime to protect their political narrative and the whole reason that they let all these folks in. Look at it this way. If a city like New York, Chicago, or Los Angeles openly admits that crime went up after implementing sanctuary policies, it completely undermines the majority of their justification for those same policies. So instead, some offenses get downgraded, some get delayed in reporting, some get labeled as what they term as non-index crimes so that they don't affect or impact the FBI's numbers, which is exactly what mostly has been going on, especially for the higher level crimes, interstate commerce, that kind of thing, where a lot of this stuff has been going on with the gangs. And of course, some of the data just never makes it to the public records to be able to be added to any of this information.
That's
So
very interesting, and we would have no idea that that's happening. The general
well,
public.
you know what, and I honestly thought I did, but the more I dug into this, more I realized, wow, I haven't really a clue above the real top level stuff that you get through daily news. And I
Yeah.
don't tend to watch the mainstream media anymore, but they don't dig under this and really look under the covers, so to speak.
Yeah.
But that's why you can't take a headline like crimes down in sanctuary cities at face value. They're not comparing the same definitions, the same
Yeah.
reporting standards, or even the same categories of crime, even from city to city. So New York is gathering information, reporting things differently than LA is or than Seattle is. So even amongst themselves, it's all a mishmash. So it's really a tough thing to narrow that down and really pin it down so you get good data that way. Okay. But again, the incentive is to paint the rosiest picture possible from their perspective, even if it doesn't match what residents are actually experiencing on the ground. And let's face it, that's really what we're hearing when we do hear things, especially in Chicago recently when ICE went in there. The local residents were, oh my gosh, bring them in. We've had shootings up and down our block for the last 5 years. We need this stopped. And once it started to make that impact, much like it did in DC, it really has slowed things down. And then that impact is being felt more and talked about by the people right there in those neighborhoods that it's truly making a difference for. Okay.
Okay.
So that said, and I realize I'm probably running a little long here, but ICE has removed thousands of people who shouldn't have been here. And then they've actually put a great draw on the public services. Absolutely, they have. And we do know that if sanctuary jurisdictions cooperated with ICE, you dramatically reduce the need for community sweeps, reduce collateral arrests, and probably reduce community tensions in general. It gets there eventually, but this would reduce it faster by not having to go house to house, going literally surrounding apartment buildings at 3 a.m. to get gang members out, etc. Much less impactful and much more low key, assuming the blue state policies would work with ICE like they should be. Okay. So where does all this leave us? Sanctuary city policies are built on an ideological belief that local jurisdictions and especially local police should never cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. Fine in debate, right? But when that ideology forces ICE to chase offenders through the neighborhoods instead of dealing with it within the jails, causes pure chaos. And then, of course, when the courts are left-leaning in areas that side with these jurisdictions almost every time, and of course, millions entered under Biden with little vetting, and when big cities refuse to cooperate, you bring all this together, you look at that and say, this was the plan. Maybe it was, maybe not, but the consequences are real. Strained budgets, overwhelmed schools and health systems, rising social service costs, and honestly, ICE having to work 10 times harder just to do what the law requires them to do. So something that nobody in the media says out loud. No country in the world allows what the sanctuary jurisdictions allow. At least, well, I shouldn't say no country. There are some in Europe that are allowing some of those immigrants to get away with a lot of really crazy stuff. But Mexico doesn't, Canada doesn't. Could you imagine trying to go into a China looking like any of us do and get away with these things?
Right.
Oh no, it just would not happen. So yeah, I mean, that kind of hits the nail right on the head. We can't go anywhere and do these things, yet these blue jurisdictions are allowing these to do this. So while those policies didn't cause every problem, they have made the existing problems a lot harder to fix. And then, of course, the Biden years poured gasoline on all of that. So it's going to be, there's a lot of efforts to turn that tide. They're well underway, but the courts and the sanctuary jurisdictions are fighting every inch of it, which of course has slowed all this to a total crawl. And pretty much that's where we stand right now. It's all tied up in court. And even this last week, if I recall, there was a federal judge, I want to say in Illinois, that basically declared that some 600 plus immigrants, or people, I should say, that had been detained had to be released, other than the baddest of the bad, because they didn't have any real reason to keep them other than they were in the country illegally. Okay, so all this time, all this money, all this effort, and one judge says, hey, guess what? You got to let them go. They really aren't that bad.
Yeah.
That's the type of thing that we're facing at this point. And that isn't going to change, unfortunately. So there we go.
I agree wholeheartedly, Ken, with a lot of what you're saying, especially with, you know, the Biden years and what went on there. I think what sticks in my crawl, and this goes back decades now, and I've been hearing this for decades and decades and decades. We need to fix our immigration laws. What is it going to take? Why aren't we doing anything about our immigration laws? And what's it going to take? Why can't that be fixed? Again, to me, it's a simple illegal term. Why can't we get our immigration laws under control and make it so that it's either easier to get in, or at least some way to make it legal so that people can come in the front door the way they're supposed to, instead of coming in the back door? I don't know. Another topic for another day, I'm sure.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I actually have an answer to that. I can keep it brief, I promise. First off, I promise, Dale, I promise I'll keep it brief. You know, one thing that I wanted to point out real quick, during Biden's time, he had complete control of everything, right? Top to bottom within the federal government, never made a move to change the immigration laws. Not a one. All the, you know, they had total control of everything. They never moved to fix that. I don't think they want to fix it. It's something they run on every year. We're going to fix it. We're going to fix it. DACA, you know, blah, blah.
Right,
they never
sure.
have fixed it. Okay.
Sure.
So with that in mind, I don't think they want to fix it. And I don't think there's enough push from the, shall we say, conservative, Republican, whatever side to fix it either, because in a way that's something they get to fight over and use to run for office. Personally, I think most of the immigration laws are fine. It is problematic. Probably people will dislike me for saying this. It is problematic to become a citizen. Costs a lot of money, takes a lot of time. But as far as I'm concerned, it shouldn't be easy.
No.
It should be something where if you really want to be here, you will do what is necessary. And I know numerous people have been through it, and they've talked to me at depth about this. It's not easy, and it's very expensive, but there is a process. And as long as you follow that process through, you know, you can become a U.S. citizen with all the rights and all the advantages that being a U.S. citizen have for them. And they're the first ones to complain about immigration and Biden opening the borders, because they were the ones hurt more than anybody else. So we go from there, and I won't carry on any beyond that now.
All right. Ken, thank you very much. Very, very good report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you letting me be on.
Thank you.
Hi, Ken.
Ken, we're over time here on this segment. I'm going to jump right to Gary's video.
Yep.
And so everyone, be prepared. Grab a hold of your chair, because this is going to kind of probably surprise you a bit. But this is Gary Harbaugh made this video recently talking about our society and what has happened to it, and of course how Convention of States can be the solution to it. So let's bring it on here and get it going, Ken. Okay.
Yep.
I'm Gary with Convention of States. When you look out from your eyes, what kind of world do you see? As I speak, the stock market has hit all-time highs in recent days. And if the government reopens, reports are expected to show GDP growth in the third quarter will exceed economists' estimates as it did in the second quarter of this year. These are the things the government wants you to focus on. They would have you believe that the world looks a lot like the image on the right. But what if we look at the society we are living in instead of just the economy? Perhaps we would see a world that looks a lot more like the image on the left. Let's dig in. In the 1950s and 1960s, most families were supported by a working dad and his stay-at-home mom taking care of 4 children in a house they purchased while in the process of building a middle-class lifestyle. During the 1950s and 60s, more than half of 30-year-old Americans were married and had purchased a home. In 2024, looking again at 30-year-olds, only 12% were married and had purchased a home. From about 51% down to 12%. Today, the fertility rate is 1.6 children per woman. It has dropped by half and is well below replacement rate. Does that sound like a society that is flourishing? What about our health? In 1960, about 11% of Americans had a chronic illness, mostly among the elderly. According to HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., today that number is over 76%, and many in that group are teenagers and even younger children. In 1900, America spent about 0.25% of GDP on healthcare. In 2023, it was 17% of GDP, according to the Federal Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and they expect it to grow to over 20% by 2033. If we make it that far, as a share of GDP, it is already more than 70 times larger than in 1900. Does this sound like a society that is thriving to you? Let's look at our society again from the perspective of our culture. In 1892, in one opinion, the Supreme Court recognized that America is a Christian nation. More recently, in 1952, the court stated, "We are a religious people whose institutions presuppose a supreme being." In more recent years, the court has deviated from making any such statement. Today, we have drifted far from that foundation. Selfishness and making science, technology, and profits our gods, it seems to me, has failed. Cultural foundational realities, such as only 2 genders, male and female, intact nuclear families as the best building blocks for society, and that each person is a unique being created in the image of God, are attacked as out of date in much of the mainstream media. Cultural foundations today focus heavily on entertainment. The media exercises narrative control to focus on distractions, artifices, and social division. We are experiencing moral decay. Cultural values, ethics, and the teaching of such things as the cardinal virtues are almost unknown in the public square. Is it any surprise that depression among teenagers has risen from about 10% as recently as 2010 to over 20% today? Federal student loan debt, which was negligible as recently as 1990, now stands at $1.75 trillion, according to the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. Today, among borrowers older than age 30, about 25% of that student loan debt is delinquent, and many people carry student loan debt who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and even 70s. Again, look at the 2 images on your screen. Which one is more reflective of our society in 2025? We live under a veneer of prosperity and abundance. However, it seems clear society and our cultural foundations are crumbling, and we are on a downward path. Let's take another look at the veneer of prosperity and abundance. The reality is our prosperity is built upon mountains of debt. America's federal debt now exceeds $38 trillion, and state debt plus private debt is in excess of $40 trillion. All this debt has helped to create what writer Charles Hugh Smith described as the waste is growth landfill economy. We purchase a lot of poorly made stuff that is soon sent to a landfill and replaced with more poorly made junk. Since 1981, tax revenue of the U.S. government has grown less than 5 times larger, while our debt has grown 44 times larger. Philosopher David Hume warned centuries ago that debt destroys nations. So I ask you, how are we doing? Has our society and culture benefited from the creation of these mountains of debt? Indeed, our wealth has grown greatly, but only about 1% of that increase in America's wealth has gone to the bottom 50% of people, and that 1% has not kept them up with inflation. The net personal wealth of people from the 50th percentile up to the 90th percentile has grown relatively little. Meanwhile, it has grown greatly for the top 10% to an average of a little more than $3 million each, and virtually exploded higher for the top 1% to an average of nearly $16 million. Now let's look at income. The share of national income going to the bottom 90% of workers has fallen from about 2/3 of total income in 1975 to less than half in 2019, according to the most recently available data. Again, which image is the better representation of society at large? The elites of society control most of the levers of power with their political contributions, which might otherwise be called bribes. While there is a veneer of prosperity and abundance, like the image on the right, the reality is we have been in an ongoing collapse of our society and culture for at least the last 75 years. It is hard to see when you only look back a few years, but if you look back far enough, it is as clear as can be. Will we continue on this path? America is due for a cultural revolution to reset the balance of power between the elites and their minions who are in government and we, the people. The best way to strip power from the elites and rebalance the levers of power is through a convention of states to limit federal spending, impose term limits on federal officials, and put limits on the exercise of federal power. If we do this, in the years ahead, both our economy and our society can look more like the image on the right and less like the image on the left. I'm Gary, and that's how I see it.
Well, what do you?
Well, I wouldn't disagree very much with him. I think we've had just a lack of moral ethics, and religion. God has been taken out of our country, and I think we're starting to see the fruits of that. They call it fruits. It's the demise of that basically.
Yeah.
is we're straying. We've strayed so far from the Christian nation we were founded on.
Yeah. A lot of content there in that video. A lot of things that we could be talking about, and
oh yeah,
we will talk about, as a matter of fact,
over time.
But and as Gary was giving us those numbers and reports from various sources.
Yeah.
What all of a sudden struck me was what Ken Whaley was talking about, was that the data is not correct necessarily.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's some incorrect data in what Gary's reporting there. I don't know.
Hard to say. At this point, Dale, the more that we discuss this, the more that we understand, basically, we used to target just the main media with this. And we all understand where they were, where their allegiance is, and, what the mouthpiece that they're used as. But it does make you, you look at even just your state, and your local and your state, governments, if they can fudge numbers, to make things the way, turn out the way they want them to look, and everybody's got the same goal, is to be reelected and retain that power. The old saying, power and money corrupt. And I think, we're seeing so much of that it's hard to disagree with it,
Yep. Okay. Well, Ken, let's start wrapping things up here this evening. Want to mention what's coming up now for us. Of course, next Monday, the 24th, will be our roundtable that we do on the fourth Monday of every month. and our topic's gonna be reducing crime in cities. This is kind of a excuse me, kind of an extension to what Ken Whaley was talking about tonight. But we're going to do it in the roundtable format with John Ackerman as our host. So that's coming up on the 24th, our roundtable. And then the following Monday, which will be December 1, so we're into December already here, we'll have at least part number 5 and the final part on Ben Franklin in the Meet the Founders series with Larry Hudson. So that's on tap for December 1. And hopefully we'll have some more content other than just that one. Of course, we have the In Focus segment on every program, except for the roundtable, where that's a panel discussion, and that format's different.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to also remind everyone that if you got any questions or comments about our broadcast, feel free to drop us an email at raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. So Ken, any comments or questions from our viewers that we need to highlight tonight?
Not tonight. We did have a couple. We had one gentleman come back who's been missing for a while because he was in a car accident a long time ago and just has been not feeling all that well. But David Todd, we want to just put out a quick hope you're feeling better and things get better soon. He was
most definitely.
David
good.
Todd. Yeah. So he was just mentioning that he wants to go back and review a lot of what he's missed. So I guess we should just remind people that if they go back to our the links in the channel, they can go back to our YouTube and go back a long ways if they need.
Okay. All right. Well, once again, folks, thank you for viewing. Thank you for tuning in tonight. And we're looking at obviously continuing to bring you content that we think is pertinent from the Convention of States perspective. So thanks for tuning in, and look forward to seeing you next Monday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So, Ken, have a good evening, and we'll let Marengo Mike close us out here.
Okay. Take care, bud.
Marengo Mike here with a reminder that our work to raise the bar on making our federal government accountable to the people is only halfway done. We need to grow our grassroots army of citizens every day to fulfill the vision of our forefathers and keep our land free and prosperous. So, if you have never signed the petition to show your support, use that QR code and do that now. While you're there, why not kick it up a notch and volunteer for many of the positions available where your talents can make a difference as we march into a new year. Thank you, and God bless.